All right, guys, welcome back. I forgot to turn my phone off and silence it, so I'm doing that real quick so that way it doesn't interrupt us.
You know what? You
But
remind me.
we done messed up already. Look at that. We
Yeah.
got recording and we done messed up
Okay.
already. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody back. We've had a couple of weeks, a couple of recordings that have just been phenomenal. Talking about individual stories, talking about some of the stuff that they've gone through, some of the things that they're doing now that are frankly changing the world. And I have the privilege now. Shawn and I talked in the green room just previous to this, and I'm actually really excited about this because immediately I knew that we had alignment. There was a lot of stuff that we were both saying I resonated with, and so I can already feel that energy starting to grow and starting to be part of it. And so I'm excited about that for today. But thank you, Shawn, for taking the time out. Thank you for, I know it's been you said it's been a hectic week already, so appreciate you actually kind of carving this time out just for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well worth it. And thank you so much for having me on. I like the structure of your show and where you're headed with it. So thanks very
Awesome.
much.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get started because we always start with
All
this
right.
question. And we kind
All
of
right.
throw it out there just to kind of see where you're at. But who is Shawn? And let's say that we've never met, but who is Shawn? I've got about 30, 60 seconds. Who are you?
So Shawn is, ultimately a screw up, mostly all the way through life. Let's just put it that way. So Shawn at this time owns a tech company, but he's actually a country kid from East Texas in a small town of 300 people. Shawn ended up being a serial entrepreneur. He was obsessed with doing startups since, why am I third personing this?
I don't know. I was
have
just thinking,
been
not very
obsessed
many people
with
do
it.
that, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's go.
No, that feels odd. Let's switch this around. No,
Okay.
I have been a serial entrepreneur since I was really about 20 years old. I've done startups. I haven't worked for anybody since I was 19 and a half, for that matter. But I am devoted. I grew up in the small town church, even though I backslid for quite a long time, and went against really what was my better knowledge values of what I was raised with. But I held on to core enough beliefs that my wife and I have been married 29 years now. We have, Shawn is third person it again. I'll be 51 this year. And we've got 3 kids in their mid 20s, and we have 3 grandkids with another one on the way. So
wow.
even though I'm a screw up, I've kept some things together and learned a lot on the way through life.
So I am going to take this down the rabbit trail already.
Uh-oh.
All right. So, I mean, like, I know
All
we
right,
do this too. So you said this now 3 or 4 times where you view yourself as a screw up. Why? Why would you say that about yourself? Why would you look at that and say, and then contrast that with the aspect that you've got 3 grown children, you've got 3 grandkids, you've got a family, you've got value. Like, there's a lot of things there. So why would you put those 2 things out there? One that says I'm an absolute screw up, I'm messed up, in essence, I don't have values, kind of the thought process there, right? And then on the other side, it's like, man, we've been married for 20 plus years, almost 30 years now. And then we've got 3 kids, and I've got 3 grandkids and another on the way. And there's a lot of value. Help me reconcile that.
Okay. All right. Well, it's actually pretty simple. There's a little saying, smartest people are the screw ups if they learn from their mistakes. And I've always been a risk taker. My wife is definitely not a risk taker. She's a play by the rules book kind of gal. But I've always been a risk taker. So since I have not worked for anyone else and had a business since 20 businesses, then you can imagine, I'm not bashing school. But in my brain, in my terminology, if you can wire yourself to be a go-getter at all times, sometimes maybe school isn't the best education. Sometimes the burn and learn education from just taking risks is sometimes the best education, way more than college can possibly teach you in that. And I've got many years of that under my belt. No schooling, but starting quick lubes, credit card companies. We could just go through all that. But most of them did fail. I did not make much money on several of the sellouts. Some of them, that many did awesome, and that many were just huge disasters at the end of the day. But boy, what an education I got from it. From screwing up, unquote.
I mean, if we define screw up, we define failure. We define and say that, hey, this guy is not successful, and therefore, if he's not successful, he has no value. How do you rectify that?
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, well, that's a good point. So I would say that the failures are the stuff that, I'm going to reference back to God. He's allowed me to go through those things to build character out of it. So in my mind, I guess part of this answer is because I guess I'm a humble person, even though I don't even want to admit that I am. And when people see that I'm 50 years old, they might see LinkedIn, they might have seen all the stuff that I've done, and they may look and say, wow, this guy's got it together. I hope they don't, because they would be dead wrong, if they did. But if I could go in and tell the stories of, all the things that I have jumped off the cliff and built the plane on the way down, hoping that I could get the plane built, and sometimes didn't. If I could tell all those stories, I think people will come to the realization that failure is a lot of the things that shape us, in our walk with many aspects of our life on that.
So,
and yeah.
Yeah, so I read this book recently. It was called The Lego Principles, written by an Australian pastor. Joey is his name. I picked it up because I'm into Lego, but there was this chapter on values, and it was kind of put out. It was really, really interesting the way that they put it out. And I'm probably going to screw a little bit of this up. But when we talk about it and he looked at it, he said, number one, it's God. God is the number one value. Okay. And then underneath of that, we have life. Our life is number two. And then underneath of that, you have physical, the health. Right. So you've got these three values and you put those in order. Right. And then on the opposite side of it, so God is greater than you have money. And then he had what he would consider enjoyment. And then he had what he considered excellence. So on the left-hand side, it goes God, life, physical health. On the right-hand side, God is greater than money. On the other side, underneath the money, would have been the enjoyment of life. So whether it's eating, drinking, whatever. And then on the bottom one is the excellence and doing things with excellence. The interesting aspect of that is so often when we consider ourselves screw-ups, we've got those values flipped. And we say that we've screwed up because we look at that value and say, well, okay, the world has this money value and we're a screw up because we didn't hit that value. But yet God is greater than the money, and life is greater than the money, and family is greater than the money. And so we have these value systems. And so it's an interesting, we're going down a whole nother rabbit trail here. And this is what this is for, is because we're crafting narratives. And I'm sure we're going to get back to part of how we define our narrative. But just at the very start of this, when we say that we're a screw up, is it because we're still trying to live off of a mixed up value system?
I can see that.
Or is it because, you know what I'm saying is, like, there's different pieces and parts to this. Go ahead.
I think it's it comes from a personal stance of staying humble. There's been times one of the screw ups in the life is not staying humble. So one way you could actually look at that is deep down inside, I have matured with God. Now I'll be 51 this year. I have matured with God 100-fold from the time I was a little kid in a 30-person small Southern Baptist church growing up, learning some little core values there. I have matured leaps and bounds. Inside, I know that my relationship with the Father gets better and better and better. Hard to call it quite a success, but he is the number one in my life, so I will call that a success. The minute that I start believing myself that I am successful, the evil pieces of pride can easily take over quickly. So to keep myself humble, I call myself a screw up, but I'm one of God's screw ups.
And I love that idea concept, because I think this is something that every man struggles with. Is how do we define the success in our life? How do we know if we've, quote unquote, done well, or played the game well, or lived our life well? How do we know if we've done that, right? And so often the world tells us, and this is one of the false narratives, that it is all about the money. It's all about the title. It's all about the position. And then that forms and creates our identity, right? And so I sit here and I frankly, I struggle with this myself. And I think that people listening struggle with it as well. Yeah. And then I sit back and I actually think about it just like you. I've got 3 kids. I've got 2 that are grown. One's going to get married here very, very shortly. If not, by the time this airs, he's already going to be married. I've got a grandkid and another one on the way. I mean, I've got this, I mean, it's hard to say that that's success, but at the same time, in my heart, I know that that's exactly what I was called to do. That's my purpose. That's my life. And so that's why I'm looking at, like, I didn't screw that up. I don't know how, but I didn't screw that up. I might have screwed up this business and that. But so, anyway,
Right. Exactly. And I'm exactly with you. I do not see any kind of mess up with the overall picture of the children and the grandchildren. As with any other parent, you look back, would I have done things differently? Oh,
Of
yeah.
course.
So I can look at that and say, wow, Sheree and I really screwed up. We didn't force the kids to go on mission trips. We never did that. We were always there, old school, Sunday mornings, Wednesdays. They saw us doing our devotions here and there. That's a success. But we would have done things differently, on top of that. So I completely agree with everything that you say. I think I just fall back on the maybe like you mentioned, so many people struggle with I could have done better. I could have done better. I could have done better. And I think there's a healthy portion of both. I hate to say a little bit of pride, but acknowledging that, you're not a total screw up. But then on the opposite end, don't let it go to your head either on the opposite end.
Well, I think that's the difference between pride and ego. I think if we labeled that other side ego and said the ego is the one that says me, I've done. And I mean, I don't think it's wrong to say that I'm proud of what has happened with my kids and what they've done. I think that's actually a very healthy thing to take pride in the excellence of your work. I think that's a very healthy thing. But when you get ego and said I did it on my own, that's when it gets into that depth of
bad deal.
There's a lot of challenges there. So and I'm sure. So let's kind of bring this back. Like, what was your? But that's what this is about. We're telling stories. That's what it's all about. I love it. So bringing this back into what you thought life was going to be like as a child growing up. And we talk about some of these false narratives, and I can already see that this is probably going to be a really healthy part of our conversation. Sometimes the false narratives are something that was said to us. Sometimes it is something that was shown, lived out. It was something that was maybe not even, we just made an assumption off of that. What was the assumptions, the narratives that you latched onto as a kid before you stepped into your adult life?
It would have definitely been what was instilled me on our little, I don't really call it a farm, but our little country setting out there. And that was work. My dad was, he worked for the local coal mine. My mom worked a lot of hours. She sold jewelry out of a little leather case, went door to door on some stuff like that. Eventually opened up a shop and things. But yeah, it was from the time I got home from school to the time I went to bed, I had chores with cattle, horses, chickens, and in the garden on my hands and knees digging potatoes out of the sand. So I had a lot of stuff to do. And I think that I know that my dad worked so much that there was many times he didn't have time to show me how to do something. The tractor was broke, or the cattle trailer, something broke on it and it had to be welded. Then my dad would say, figure it out. And I've got a book that I'm writing right now that I hope to have out by the end of this year. And it's figure it out. That was instilled in me and the kids. So of course, when you grow up with that, you think hard work. And if you don't know how to do it, figure it out, and get it done. So of course, that's awesome to have that work ethic, drawn into you as a kid. I think so many kids are missing that nowadays, but the opposite end of it. I was going to say,
what's the but? Here we go.
But is like I mentioned, serial entrepreneur. My focus was around being successful in the business and bank accounts and things like that. That was my true definition, because when I went through school, got on the work program when I was 10 years old, I was out of school at 10:30, down at the Piggly Wiggly sacking groceries pretty much all day. I was at Piggly Wiggly sacking groceries more than I was at school, because Texas work programs in those days, you could do that. So of course we went from there into the quick lubes and into the businesses. So make money was the definition. Success is about making money and building something big, not relationships. Those are important. My God-fearing stuff was, make sure those things are kept, make sure your house is in order. I leave in quotations there. That's fine. But the main priority was success in money and business.
So if you would define that narrative, what did that narrative, like if you were kind of just shrink it down, because we talked about it, it's right there shrink it down and just give it to me in one sentence. What is that false narrative that you embodied?
Manna, money over God. Not asking God for direction.
System? Yeah.
Me. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. That was definitely an unspoken motto in my soul. Go
Excuse
to
me.
God when there's a problem. Yeah, go to God when there's a problem. Yeah.
So how did that flesh out then? And it was, and I'm sure it did, both within your
Did.
personal life as well as within your relationships with your wife, and like
Mhm.
I'm sure it probably showed up in many many different areas. But what did that? How did that impact actions in relationships?
Sure. I think that it's a failure in a couple of businesses.
Mm,
My auto lube businesses went great. We went out to 7 locations. Sold those out when I was, gosh, I guess in my early 30s. We had 7 quick lube locations that Cherie and I had. Even though she's a full time nurse, she was there as the backbone of it. It was fine, but then let's say ego, pride took over, and I started launching more after that. And it was a couple of really hard financial failures that really sent me for a whirlwind. And that's when I realized, like I hinted at a second ago, I was asking God for His help after I had already half burned the ship down and couldn't get
mm,
back, already. Instead of making a decision, instead of feeling like it was meant to be up to me, instead of going to Him first and saying, this is a big opportunity. I need to take a breath. I don't need to be that fast decision maker, risk taker that's in my nature there. And pray about it
So
on that.
did
And
you
it
take
broke
that
me.
risk because you had that ego side of things where it was like, I know that I can make this work and I can make the money
Yeah.
and I can. So
Yep.
that
That's
was
exactly right.
okay.
That's
So how
exactly
did
right.
that
Nothing will fail unless I fail kind of mentality on that.
right? So how did that impact your relationship with your wife, or did it? And then how did it impact your relationship with your kids, especially as they were growing?
I think that we went through some severe financial struggles when obviously the kids were young then, obviously, through those business because they're in their 20s now. But I think going through that, and then my wife having to work 3 different jobs to keep up with some of the failures and the major crashes that had happened.
Hmm.
I think my kids and my wife learned from it. At those times, it was horrible. Divorce was never a word. We both grew up in the church. We knew things are going to get bad. We were pre-warned already. Things are not going to be pretty in
Right.
marriage. We knew that. So we had that backbone. But going through it, that doesn't mean that there wasn't some heated moments at home that the kids heard on that. So the kids, such severe pains that even your children, your wife even learned from it. That's
Hmm.
kind of embarrassing to admit. But sometimes, you know, you're not going to learn it until you go through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look at that, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of you mentioned about being humble is the ability to be able to go back and say, hey, look, I screwed up, I messed up,
Yeah.
for whatever that action was or whatever. And I've got stories of that on my own. Do you have anything that stands out in your mind, like just as this is the one time I knew I needed to go back and apologize? Maybe it's a little
Let's
bit too
see.
personal. I apologize if I'm getting too
No, it's fine.
personal,
No,
but
it's fine. No, it's fine. I'm an open book. Yeah, gosh, there was one time, not exactly, well, actually, really not my fault at all. The only business I ever went in and had a partner with was in a break off of the credit card merchant companies, where businesses take their credit cards, that type of
yeah.
merchant processing. And I started with a partner. I had never had a partner before in my life, and the business took off. I think we were 18 months in. We ranked way up there. We had almost 10,000 sales reps in 18 months. I mean, we were just
Wow.
exploding the doors open on it in the early 20 teens there. And Greed took over, and he popped in one day and he said, gosh, I just don't really know if I need you anymore. We never got an operating agreement done. And I was like, are you serious? So there was some times there, definitely not my fault, but yeah, it was a knockdown, drag out of my stupidity. I should have known better in business. And the kids, we had to get rid of a home that our teenage kids loved, and my wife just loved. We had to sell out, work like dogs to load up a Penske truck and move. And it was extremely humbling. And in that time, I just had to tell everybody, even though I wasn't apologizing for anything I necessarily done, I was apologizing for how I could have handled it differently and a better prep, and being so careless with my family
Mm,
because I was so, aggressive in business.
mm, hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what? Okay, there's so much there, but at the same time,
Yeah.
what what was that wake up call? I mean, because we're talking about the fact, like you said, the narrative was money over literally just about anything else. Money defined the success. Ego obviously
Yeah.
played some pieces and parts in there, but what was that? Well, maybe it was a series of events, but how did your
Yeah.
mindset perspective shift from away from that to realize, like, look, I just can't keep living like this?
Yeah. I think because I was so centered around money, I think when the money was gone is when it broke the camel's back. It's when I
Mm.
realized I'm overdoing it. I'm being so aggressive. I'm putting relationships on, you know, uh, uh, on in the danger zone.
Right.
Forgot my word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
No. You're good. So,
yeah.
and I mean, as you kind of dig into part of that money aspect of it, was it like the entire world was knocked out from underneath you? Was it a change in
Hmm.
identity? Was it like a so you hear a lot of these stories about people when they have a large business failure and the money's completely gone. Their identity is
Hmm.
so tied up within that it's they commit suicide. They are, like we saw on Wall Street,
Yes.
that people just jumping off of buildings and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
what was
So
it like
sad.
when things all of a sudden that ladder, the foundation got knocked out from underneath of you?
Yeah, you bet. So it's not having, any money at all, not even in savings. That's when you're broken. And in my particular case, and I recommend this to everybody on the listeners, turn to God. You've got some things out of whack. Exactly like you said a second ago. There's your God and your lifestyle and your health and things. They're not in order when things. And I'm not saying that they can't be in order and things like that happen. I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
God can still allow us to go through and learn some things. But in that particular moment of realizing that I was being so aggressive and I had pulled money out of savings. I had used even some of Cherie's money out of her IRA from her jobs to pump into the business, saying, "This is going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work." That's when we came to that broken point of having nothing and having the humiliation, because I am, and this goes back to pride, where I've learned from this,
Mm-hmm.
but it is very humiliating in front of friends and family to come in with your tail between your legs, being at the age you are, needing to move in with your parents for a couple of months with your 3 teenage kids because of the stacked up mistakes and aggressiveness in business, and not putting God first in
Mm.
everything. That is the moment that I turned the turning point, maybe not on that day, but during that period there within the following weeks and months, is when I turned from being a Christian at the building on Sunday morning to a Christian 7 days a week in my life, walking it,
Mm.
because I was truly broken on
Yeah.
that. And people say, "Oh, you lose money and you make more." Well, you do when you're a W-2 employee. But if you are working on your own and you're not getting a paycheck, then and you build up and everything's gone, you don't sit there and eat beans and cornbread for 7 days for the next paycheck to come in 7 days later. You are
Yeah.
truly broke, because the only income coming in is, the wife obviously always continued to work on that. But that's when, by the way, I mentioned earlier, the wife went up to 3 jobs. That's humiliating, to be that much of a failure as a man and a
Yeah.
husband and a father.
What do you do every day?
Oh my goodness. What do I not do?
Yeah,
Let's
well, I
see.
mean, not now. I'm talking about when you're going through that. I mean, I know now you
Yeah.
got, but what did you do in the middle of that? Because at that point in
Uh,
time, you're just like, all of a sudden, everything's gone that you were working on. Your entire schedule
yeah.
gets upheavaled, and it's like, and I guarantee there's somebody listening right now that is in the
Hmm.
middle of that situation, and they're just completely devastated. They're at the bottom, and they don't know. The way it's been described to me when I talk to different guys in these positions is, it feels like I'm in a dark room. There are no
Yeah.
lights, no
Yeah.
exits, and I have no idea where to take the next step.
Yeah.
So going through
Yeah.
that, what do you do? What do you do all day when you're going through that, and how do you handle? How do you recover a little bit?
Yeah. So that's pretty easy. Step one for all your listeners is get down on your knees, or even face first on the floor, find a quiet room somewhere and just talk to God. You don't believe in him? You soon will.
Mm.
Keep talking to God. Ask him, humble your heart in before him. So get your mind right first, because God is number one. This life is short and we certainly don't have our crap figured out. So go to God with it first. Second of all, God's not going to just dump something in your lap if you're not taking steps forward. So being a serial entrepreneur, the first thing I started doing was digging for another opportunity to get out there, another startup to get going.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, in a subline story there, it's like you didn't allow the fear just to freeze you. You didn't allow the fear to continue to grow. There's a whole conversation we could have about that aspect of it. But all right, so as we're looking at this, what do you do? Maybe it's, I'll let you take it whatever direction you want to go. But as of right now, what are some habits that you do on a regular basis to be able to maintain and craft that narrative? What are some routines that you put in place? What are some actions, some things? How do you live your life now so that way you can write that narrative, write the life story, the legacy, whatever you want to call it? What are you doing now in order to be able to craft that?
Sure. So for me personally, after learning through all those experiences and then turning to God and realizing how much more God blessed my journey in the following businesses thereafter just by turning to Him first. In that, my day-to-day life is I wake up and my wife and I do morning devotionals and say prayer together. Our day starts with Him. We're not going to, in our mind, and I'm pretty sure we're 1,000% correct to any of your listeners here, we start it with God, number one. If you're not doing that, try it. Give it a 90-day, and you're going to see huge differences in us. So that's number one. Number two is I don't try to take it all on myself anymore. Instead of being border out of health from stress and anxiety and trying to work, 14, 15, 16, 18-hour days, which still happens every now and then, by the way. I can't get away from that all the time. But that's neither here nor there. Let's cut that part out now. But with that, I put a lot of it on God. And if you're doing a startup, especially if you're doing an aggressive startup, it doesn't really matter if you're doing a startup. Even if you're working your job and you're trying to climb up the ladder, don't try to take it all on yourself. I mean, turn to Him and say, look, I don't know why this happened. This looks pretty close. I know you got it, God. And you just continue pushing forward. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset with Him. And it makes all the difference in the world, because I got so stressed at one point that I got Bell's palsy down one side of my face. It looked like I had a stroke. This side of the face just didn't move. And it was and I handle stress pretty well, from being in business and doing startups. It's super stressful, but I learned how to handle it, or did I? It eventually pulled, everything down. So I've learned my lesson from it. So my day to day is don't stress over stuff. Don't relax. Don't just be careless. There's a difference in being careless and trusting in God. There's a difference in that.
I'm sitting here deciding if I need to go down this route of what you just talked about as far as the stress.
I'll let you got it, man.
Oh, my goodness. Because that is such a big, big deal in today's society, the stress and the aspect of how much it actually impacts our physical life. And there's I did a whole talk just on this one thing. And I'm just like, my goodness gracious, it's such an important key. And you just briefly mentioned that. I guess let me just ask this question in regards to the stress and how it physically affected. Did you expect that? And then I already know the answer, but I want to ask the question anyway. Did you see it all at one time, or was it kind of a slow ebbing away of your physical abilities and your physical strength?
So I did not see it at first. In fact, the more stress that I had, the more money we had in the account. Because at the time you go status quo and get comfortable, not only does a lot of stuff fall, but a lot of times, your income does too, especially when you're self-employed, especially, in that. So yeah, I did see how, as I would status quo things would go down. So I obviously always wanted to be mixing and changing things up and quickly taking those risks with fast decisions, aggressive. And the more stress that came in, the more money came in. So no, I did not realize what it was doing to me in the long run. After the crashes and all the episodes in life, that's when I looked back and said, Shawn, you're a screw up. You've got to, you got to get a hold of this. Everything's headed downstairs because of it. So really, to ultimately answer it, no, until the wake up call happened. And unfortunately, no matter what you're going through, sometimes rock bottom it can be healthy.
Yeah. Well, and rock bottom is going to look different for everybody. And that's what I love about these narrative stories that we tell is everybody has a little bit different. And some people, their rock bottom is drastic. a lot of drama, a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And then other times it's just a simple of moving from one point to another. So it's very, very interesting to see how that all plays out. I kind of, as we close down, and we might actually be another couple minutes here, so we're closing, but we're the old time closing, right? Yeah. So as what is the one thing that you would want somebody to walk away with today? And we didn't even talk about your current organization, the Act Social, which it kind of weaves into everything because it's your life, right? But what is the one thing that you would want to have somebody walk away with out of all of the stuff that we've talked about? What's something that you would want somebody to walk away with?
I think I'm going to circle right back to the stress and anxiety in the life, because everybody to some degree has got it there. And if your stress and anxiety is ruling your life right now, you're not going to know it unless you step back and examine it, because it sneaks in like a cancer and you get used to it. So I'm going to ask the crowd, the audience, to do some soul searching and find out what's making you stressed and anxiety, whether it's social media, or if it's a family member, or if it's whatever. And you may say that's something I can't change, and a lot of times you're right. You can't change that other relationship, but how you perceive it, you can. You can take control of that. You can control your own mind, even though people don't think that you can. You can. Right. And there's a good chance you're not going to do it by yourself in a lot of cases too.
That's so true. That's so true. Yeah. You need somebody to walk with you.
You do.
Right. So I actually do want to take just a second. We're going to kind of go off of our normally scheduled agenda conversation and actually talk about the Act Social, because I do think that this is something. It applies. It's very applicable, because we're talking about stress. We're talking about some of the stuff that does happen through social media. And while social media can, for one side of it, be a very, very positive because we're communicating, we're sharing, there's also a huge negative side to it. And I know that I've even shared this when we talk about narrative, is the fact that oftentimes the greatest lie comes about because of our social media. And that is due to the fact that we only see the highlights. We only see the things. And so we think everybody else's life is perfect. And so therefore we believe ours is not. And therefore we don't share the things that are going on. It becomes very, very lonely. And that's one of the biggest lies, one of the biggest false narratives. But you've created something called Act Social that is really focused on encouragement, on positivity, on gratefulness. Walk me through some of that and why that's such a big, big key, not in just dealing with the stress, not in just dealing with our own lives and developing a stronger life, but why did you do that?
You bet. So I'll fast forward through the beginning of the story. I had a little prompting from the Holy Spirit after a morning devotional with my wife on my current tech company that I opened up in late 2016, 17. And it was working. It was making money. It wasn't going to be any kind of huge company or anything like that. And I was a little disturbed about, we were getting by on the company, and that was just about it. So I have gotten in the habit, out of all my burn and learn education, to ask him about it. And I did. And I had a prompting that stood the hair up on my body and told me to drop all the new clients, totally change the direction. Instead of building software products for other people, build one software product, a social media platform, and do it different. Make it Christ-centered rules, not a Christians only social media, but a social media that, like you said, the gratefulness and the gratitude that you post, the positivity, not the lies. It's your gratefulness. What you're grateful for today is what it's actually driven for. So we did that. Gosh, Tim, that was 2.5 years ago that I was prompted to build that. I thought it was going to take about a year. Here we are 2.5 years later. We launched it about 8 weeks ago. But during that time of getting the website up, about a year and a quarter ago, we had almost 140,000 people flood into the website. We still don't know how, because we didn't do advertising, flood into the website and sign up to be notified when Act Social went out, because I think that there is a a joint little hatred, I hate to say that word, in people for traditional social media. Because like you and I talked about in the green room, you can open up your wife's Facebook, and I'm actually not a social media person. I rarely get on my own Facebook. I don't have really any other accounts that aren't at least managed now. We're doing postings as company on stuff, but I don't get on social media. It's just, it kind of makes me sick in my stomach. But what you and I talked about in the green room, you can open up your Facebook, you can open up your wife's Facebook. Why is it that when I scroll down, I see more guy ads and bikinis and things like that I'm going through? And lo and behold, when my wife scrolls down, she doesn't see anything like that. She sees purses and things she's missing in her life on her side. And I think that the big tech giants in the world are using algorithms to against your human nature instead of for it. And in Act Social, we don't use any algorithms at all. No algorithms, no nothing that's going to play against you. It's all pure positivity. And again, that's you should feel good about doom scrolling through social media, and it's impossible on any other platform.
I would say this, and what I've seen briefly, is the difference between manipulation and influence. When you manipulate, and this is what a lot of the socials do, they manipulate the data, they manipulate the thing because they want something that is for their good.
Right.
On the flip side of that, when you influence, if you're influencing someone, the definition that I use for influence is you're influencing somebody to do something good for them. You're influencing
positive
them to be,
influence.
It's a positive spin. On the manipulation, it's that negative spin because it's more of like we talked about the pride, the ego kind of a thing. But from a company standpoint, they are manipulating you to get something from whatever it is that they think that you have, and to make them better, make them sell, make them whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it, like I said, is that influence. And I think that's the greatest difference between the two that we're approaching here, is that it's more about influencing for a positive exchange, something that's going to be embettering for you, versus a manipulation to get something out of you.
Right. You're exactly right. And you mix all that in, you get rid of the ads that are in a system, which we've done. You get rid of all that. You take out all the profanity, all the nasty politics stuff, because that makes stress and anxiety blow the roof wide open here recently, doesn't it? So you get rid of that. You get rid of bad pictures, bad videos, bullying, negativity and stuff. And it's amazing when you take it back to its positive roots, how social media becomes a positive influence in someone's life. You feel good after going through and scrolling through your feed after a little while. You feel encouraged. You feel better, about what's going on. So that's tough.
There was a book that was written. It was called Bowling Alone. This was back in, I think, 1999, because everything stopped all of his research stopped at 2000. And he was talking about the reason why he wrote the book was that it was a significant decline in the community aspect in the United States. And all of these different statistics and data that he had was talking about how things have been in a steady decline. The reason why I bring that up is because I think social media, man, I don't know how you didn't really talk about that part in the play and how things work, because he had a lot of other data, a little bit in there, but not significant. And I wonder too, how often, if he would do some of the same research now, 25 years later, how much of an impact that the decline of community would have because of our social media and the prevalence that it plays in our lives, both for the negative and it could also potentially be for the positive. So it's an interesting thought of how to be able to actually take a look at that. But it is something that I think is truly needed, where we have to get back to our community. We have to get back to brothers helping brothers and people working with each other.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that would get a lot of people off of some of their medications if they got out and started helping other people.
Absolutely. So, all right. Is there anything you want to add? Anything else that you're like, hey, this is on my heart and I got to just say this?
I don't. It's on my heart. Thank you exactly for having me on your show. It's been an honor and a blessing to be here. But yeah, that's really the majority of it. Thanks. You've done some things out of me here. It's in a good way. So thank you. Some things,
absolutely.
How you choose not to think about some things in your life, but it's a good dig out, and I've really enjoyed talking. And I hope it benefits someone on your listeners on that.
Well, let me ask you this last question then. Let's say somebody resonates with you. How can they get in contact with you? What's the best way? Is it email, website? Where are you at?
Sure, you bet. If they want to go to actsocial.com, we would be blessed to have them. If that's not something that's your forte, no problem. You can still go to Act Social and do the contact us, and anything you address to Shawn comes to me.
Okay.
Somebody
Perfect.
on my team assigns it to me. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. So just, and it's SHAWN for those that are listening. So if you just go in there, just so you know how to spell his name, so it works out. But awesome. Again, thanks for being a part of this. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to be actually sharing with us.
You bet.
So for those listening, there's so much I want to say, but at the same time, I know I got to keep it within the boundaries of where we're at as far as our episodes and things. But I will say this. One of the things that drives me, as well as I can tell already, it drives Shawn, is the fact that when somebody wants to, if somebody has something that just resonates or something that changes your life or something that you're like, man, this just meant a lot to me. Just a simple statement, whether that is through an email or calling us or contacting us, just one of those things that it makes our lives, it just fulfills us. It gives us the blessings that we need. It's a matter. So here's what I'm saying is, if something touched you, something changed you, reach out, either contact me or contact Shawn, because it makes a big difference just in hearing, and it gives us the inspiration to keep going, to sharing these stories. And so we love hearing from you guys in that way. And then the second thing is, everybody's story is important. Everybody has a story to be able to tell. And so I encourage you to continue to listen, maybe go back, re-listen to some of the episodes, but keep writing and crafting your story, because there is value and you are valuable. And even if you're in the middle of the stress, middle of the night, and can't see your way out, just take that next step. Reach out, work with somebody, have a community, start building that community around you, because that's how we craft, that's how we create our stories. And again, your story is valuable. So thanks for listening. Check us out on YouTube, and we can stay connected that way. And next time we have another great guest, so we'll see you then.
Thanks.